Okay, injector pump is all back on. I don't have the throttle linkage hooked up yet because I'm just gonna manipulate it by hand when I try to fire it up here. I do have the stop cable, shut off cable hooked up. Got everything all back together. So I just checked the fluid levels. I think then they're good. So I guess it's time, ladies and gentlemen. Let's see what happens here. Oh man, so it's been a long time coming, and I'd be lying if I said I wasn't nervous. So here we go. I got a block here to block off the air in case it runs away or something on me. I don't know, but here we go. Okay, throttle's on, battery's on. Woo-hoo-hoo! Oh my gosh, what a welcome sound and sight that is. Nice and quiet, no knocking. Let her idle. I can't remember. I think there is a break-in sequence. I'll have to look that back up. I got a pretty good drip coming from the plug in the bottom of the injection pump from where I screwed up the threads trying to extract that broken bolt. Doggone, I don't know what's going to happen there. Hopefully I'll be able to come up with something. Get a bigger O-ring or something to put in there. But listen to that thing. Pressure gauge is pegged out for some reason. I don't know what's going on there. Clearances were all good, so it should be. Don't have any engine temp yet. Shut off arm isn't working for some reason. I don't know if I've got to readjust things or what. Huh. Restart. The instructions that came with the pistons, rings, and liners for break-in times. There's 1 minute no load. We've already done that. 2 minutes no load at high idle. I don't know if I'm gonna bother with that. 5 minutes at 50% engine load, which I don't know. I got to drive it to do that, so we're not gonna mess with that right now. I did manage to get that injection pump plugs to seal up, but now I see something else dripping under there. I think it's a fuel leak too, so I'll look into that. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna let it run for a little while until I see some engine temperature. Okay, oil pressure's coming down, so that's good. Engine temp's coming up. Obviously wired something wrong with the voltmeter. That doesn't surprise me. I got a little confused on that. These are looking good. No leaks anywhere over here. Everything looks good. Sounds good. Just about a year after I started this channel, it's been just a little, maybe just a little over a year, when I first introduced you to this tractor and pulled it up here and started diagnosing and tore it down, and it took me almost a year. Got that engine all completely rebuilt, sourcing parts and learning how to do these. I must have 1,000 hours of YouTube viewing, just learning about how to go about this. And yeah, and today was the day it lit right off, so pretty pleased. Got a few things. If you recall, like I said, I still am having a drip from the bottom of the injection pump. There's a little plug that goes in the bottom, and when I broke that ball off in there, I tried to weld something onto it, and I arced, because I'm a crappy welder, I arced too many times on the threads of that aluminum housing where that screws into. I saved the threads, but it appears to be dripping. I've tightened it a couple of times and it slowed way down, but it's still got a drip about once every minute or so, one drip. So I think I'll be able to pull it. It's got an O-ring on it. I think I'll be able to pull it out, and maybe I can just put a slightly bigger O-ring in there and get that stuck back in. Other than that, I'm bone dry. No oil leaks, no water leaks. Oil pressure settled back into about 35 pounds, which is good. Water temperature got up to about 195, and it's a 180 degree thermostat, as I recall. So not sure what's going on there, but it's probably just generating a little extra heat. And then the biggest thing to deal with is my fuel stop won't shut the motor off. I don't know what's going on. It acts like it doesn't have any effect whatsoever. So I don't know what's happening there. I guess I'll probably have to take the top of this injection pump back off and see if I did something wrong in the linkage in there, because it should, I don't know why it wouldn't. I'll just take it all loose and start it up and manually shut it off and see. There are various adjustment points. Maybe I've got something a little out of adjustment compared to where it was originally. Not sure. So that's the first thing I'll do in the morning, is pull that back off and take a look at that and make sure we're okay inside there. Make sure the little clip didn't come loose or anything. Yeah, other than that, I'm pleased as punch. Sounds really good, running good. Yeah, so we'll button this stuff up tomorrow, and then maybe we'll move it around a little bit. And I have no idea where I'm at clutch wise or anything. I did not replace the clutch. It looked okay to me. I had the flywheel surface, but I didn't see anything wrong with the pressure plate or the clutch disc. I did put a new throwout bearing in, so I've got to adjust all of that. I got to get all the throttle linkages adjusted out properly, get that shut off working, and then I think I'm ready to go for a little drive and see how it acts, and go from there. So all right, stay tuned. So we're back at it here. Had a few things to take care of, and full disclosure, a fair amount transpired after the last segment that I filmed. I mentioned that the fuel shutoff wouldn't activate, and I couldn't figure out why. There was no reason for it not to. And so I pulled the top of the governor housing off. I started to suspect something was going on because my throttle shaft and fuel shutoff shaft were kind of loose all of a sudden. And I thought, well, that's not right. They were nice and tight when I put it together. And if you recall, there's a little shepherd's hook piece that locks those two linkages together. If you back up to, I don't know, the last video, I guess, when I was assembling it, that little shepherd's hook snaps in there, and it holds these two pieces of throttle assembly together, and it actuates when you pull back on this throttle shut off or fuel shut off lever. It actuates it and shuts the pump off. And so I started thinking, well, maybe that clip came loose. So I decided to pull the cover off this, and I pulled the cover off, and lo and behold, that clip wasn't even there. And I knew that I had installed it. I went back in my shop. I looked everywhere thinking maybe it fell off, flew off, because it clips on pretty good, I thought. And I couldn't find it anywhere. So then I started thinking, well, I remembered when I initially started it on the first couple of startups, I kept hearing this tinny ringing kind of sound, and I just didn't put much thought to it. I thought maybe the rain cap was making noise, but it really sounded like it was coming from down here somewhere, and I couldn't imagine what would be making that noise. Well, then once I pulled that cover off and found that clip gone, I realized what had happened. That clip came off and washed down and down inside the injection pump, down to the governor weight cage. Now there's a fair amount of open area in there to allow movement for that. So I knew it must be down in there. I tried reaching in there with a little magnet to see if I could catch it, and that wasn't working. So ultimately, I had to pull all of this back off. Fuel filter assembly, injection lines, fuel supply lines, pull the pump clear off, take it in the shop. I tried shaking that piece out. It wouldn't come out. I didn't even know for sure if it was in there or not, but I was 90% sure. And I didn't film any of this. You've seen the whole procedure, but of rebuilding it and putting it together, so I didn't want to bother you with that. But ultimately, I took this pump back apart on the bench, and sure enough, that hook dropped out of that governor weight cage. It was just kind of wedged in there. Now, thankfully, it didn't grind itself up. It didn't damage anything in there. Everything's fine. So I guess I just didn't get that clip all the way seated down on that linkage. So I put it all back together and made darn sure that thing clipped on there, and it did. It locked down on nice and solid, and so then I had to put everything back together again. I did all this yesterday morning. came out and just rushed through it and got everything. I'm pretty practiced at it now. That's like the 4th time I've had that injection pump off. So took it all off, got it in there, tore it all down, and remedied it, put it all back together, brought it out here, put it all back on the tractor, got everything hooked up, fired it up, and it fired up and ran just fine and no noise. And now the shutoff works and everything. So I also at the same time fixed the leak on the bottom of the pump. There's that little plug that screws in. I mentioned, you know, from arcing, trying to weld a bolt to that broken stud, blah, blah, blah. I had arced on the aluminum threads too many times, kind of messed them up, but I got it all resolved. I put a little bit bigger O-ring around the plug, and even a little bit of silicone, because there's a little irregularity in the sealing surface, so I put a little silicone, just very little dab in there, and tighten that all up, and it's nice and tight now and not leaking at all. So I don't have any drips or anything from anything now. So that's all resolved. Fuel shutoff works. So today I'm going to hook up all the throttle linkages, and I put new ends on a bunch of on some of the linkages because they were worn out. These little we used to call them, back when I was racing, we called them Heim joints, these little rod ends. I had to replace this one, and there's an intermediate throttle shaft that goes from the hand lever here that connects via this bell crank to the foot throttle, and I had to replace that, the ends on both ends on that little one too. So I've got to adjust all of this, figure out what the adjustment wants. Then I didn't change anything on the clutch, so I think the clutch linkage should be okay. Don't know for sure, we'll find out. So I get this all hooked up and adjusted up. I got to finish topping off the gearboxes. When it's sitting here idling, maybe some of you folks that have any more experience about this can tell me, I hear a lot of gear rollover noise in there. I don't know if that's normal. I don't recall. You know, I just don't know. I think it's fine. I've had this cover off when I replaced the axles, and oh no, it was this cover. That's all off to get at the bull gears and everything, to pull the axle shafts out, to put new bearings and seals in there, and everything looked nice and clean in there. You can see into the transmission portion. It looked good. I don't know much about the I don't even know what you call this shuttle portion. But anyway, I'm just going to make sure that everything's all full of fluids properly, and go from there. So that's today's project. And then I hope to drive this thing around today. And I did test the hydraulics, the bucket loads or lifts and tilts and everything. That's all fine. I do have one cylinder over here that's leaking. I got, so these two, the bucket let's see, I guess the bucket curl cylinders, I haven't rebuilt those. I've rebuilt all the other cylinders, the other 3 cylinders on this tractor, but I did not rebuild those. This one, as you can see, doesn't leak at all. That one leaking, but not terribly, but still. And I got to replace this hose, obviously. I can put the grill back in. I was leaving it off to make sure I didn't have any leaks at the hydraulic pump or any of that. That's all fine, so I can put the grill back in too. And yeah, and then we'll start out just driving around the yard a little bit, and then maybe take it out on the county road and drive it for half a mile or so and see what happens. So okay, just about to put the air cleaner together. As you recall, and there's a whole episode in the playlist about rebuilding this, taking it all apart, cleaning all the inside mesh and what have you. And now I got to fill it up with oil so it sucks air in through here, goes through this it's kind of a steel wool type stuff trap to catch the big stuff, and then it sucks it up through this oil, back up the outside, and then down to through this hose to the intake manifold. And so the air this keeps the critters out right here. Then the mesh inside filters out the bigger particulates. Then the air gets sucked up, like I say, through the oil, back up. And so that's the 3 stages of cleaning the air prior to it coming in here. So it's just got to be filled up here with the right amount of oil. Up to that, there's an oil level mark on there, so right to there. Now I just have to put all this back on without spilling anything. Put this all back together without spilling it. So, and then we'll mount it on the tractor. Okay, grill is all put back together. Got air cleaner all assembled. Filled that bottom portion with oil. Got it all mounted on here nice and solidly. That's all back together. That's the air intake. So I think we're ready to fire it back up this morning. And let's see what happens here. Okay, here we go. First start of the day. We're starting a couple of days actually. Or now since yesterday, I guess. So here we go. Contact. Maybe. Okay, got a few things to work on here. Okay, so like I said, about a year ago, I drove this thing into this very spot, shut it off, and tore it apart. And now is the first chance I get to actually try to move it. So we'll see what happens here. I haven't messed with the clutch, but I didn't change any adjustments on it, so I'm hoping that it's okay. We're about to find out here. Second gear. Reverse. Hydraulics are working. Good. All right, here we go. Hey, look at that, would you? It's moving. It's alive. It's alive. It runs. It runs good. Everything sounds good. Everything's working good. Just got done with about a 4-mile road trip, and yeah, seems to be good. I'm very, very happy. Everything's working, everything's functioning. Got good oil pressure, good water temperature. Although the water temperature climbed up a little bit. I got a 180-degree thermostat. Still climbs to right about 200, so I'm not sure what's going on there. But in any case, everything else is good, runs good, starts good. Everything's functioning. About the only thing that's not functioning at this point is my voltmeter, and first of all, I'm not sure that my alternator is even working, so I'll have to dig into that a little bit, but those are minor points. So thing doesn't use much juice except for starting, and it starts right up, so not much worry about that either. So after all this time, for those of you that have been with us this whole time, started a year ago. It was, I think I looked, and it was like April 19th when I pulled it right to this spot and started diagnosing and ultimately tore it down. So it's been a year. It's been 54 weeks. Now a lot of that was winter, obviously, and we weren't doing too much. That was when we were building the motor inside, but yeah, other than that, it's gone really well. It took me a long time to source all the parts and correct parts, and had to modify some parts because I couldn't get the correct parts. And but yeah, it came out good. Everything's working good. About the only thing left, I got to order a new steering wheel. As I mentioned before, splines are shot on that one, so it's just kind of sitting on there, a little risky driving it. All I'm gonna do, the splines on the shaft are fine. It's just the ones in the hub of the steering wheel are shot. So I got a new steering wheel and nut and horn cap or center cap, and other than that, we're good. I just don't know. I put new tires on it already, so that's all good. Got a little bit of hydraulic work to do. I'll rebuild these 2 bucket cylinders. I got a couple of hoses to have built and replace, and that's ultimately it. So, geez, what an ordeal. I just appreciate everybody. I hope you found this interesting. I hope you found it helpful if you've got one like it. The next thing that we'll be doing from here is I'll put the backhoe back on it. It's sitting out in the back of the place. I got to go out there and get it all picked up off the ground and get it mounted back on here. And we got some hydraulics to work on that. I think I got a cylinder. I rebuilt 1 cylinder already, but I think the dipper and the main boom cylinders both need to be rebuilt. One of them is leaking, and I got to figure it out. So anyway, we'll get to that. No hurry, but yeah, so that's basically all she wrote. I'll be putting this together and get it on for you guys to see. And once again, I appreciate everybody tuning in. Hit that like button, subscribe. We'll start to have now woodworking and sawmilling videos coming up on here more than this tractor. So we're kind of done with the tractor for a while as far as videos go. And I appreciate everybody's patience. I appreciate comments. I gladly take comments. Please post them, and we'll see you next behind the sawmill. Okay, thanks everybody.